Good morning and welcome to the February Cabinet meeting. Really great to be holding this morning in Cozenton Park Sports Centre. Of course, when we had our budget cabinet meeting last year, this place wasn't open. And it's really fantastic to see not only it being open, but as I was walking in today, Bradfield's Academy are here using it. We've got people in the gym. This is a buzzing, active sports centre being used by all parts of our community. And that just shows as a real-life, real-time example of the difference this administration is making to Medway. And we'll talk more about that as we move through to the agenda this morning. I want to also, of course, mention the last 7 days before we move into the formal agenda. It is deeply disappointing that I'm not starting this morning's meeting by saying I welcome the fact we've been chosen as a priority place. I want to place on record my thanks to fellow cabinet members, to officers, some of whom put in hundreds of hours over the Christmas period in particular to deliver, I think, a strong plan, along with colleagues in the other 13 councils, of course, particularly Kent County Council. We had a plan which had the support of 14 council leaders, was supported by a number of our key stakeholders. It's disappointing that my government, our government, took the choice that they did last week. But we are where we are, to use that hackneyed cliche. But it's true. You know, there's disappointment, but we move on. We're Medway, we're robust, we're resilient, and we get on with it. So, of course, I've met with civil servants, and thanks to officers for supporting me in that. I'll be meeting with them again to understand the next steps. We had a letter inviting us to take part in the local government reorganisation programme. Of course, we will do that. There's some requirements to get some things in place by the middle of March. I take a view, I think our initial position as a region is pretty clear. Nobody wants one council. Nobody wants two councils. I asked that question directly of council leaders and chief executives in December. Not one person put their hand up. And there is clearly, broadly, and I think it's fair to say this in this environment, a fairly political split between some political parties wanting 3, some political parties wanting 4. I think that's probably almost enough for us to be telling government in March. So we have a Kent leaders meeting later this week, and I'll certainly be sharing that view. And if colleagues want to say anything before we move into the formal agenda on that specifically, I would welcome that. And the final thing I'll say before I hand over to other colleagues before we move to the formal agenda, of course I recognise we had 3 by-elections last week, a difficult, disappointing result in 2, a positive result for this administration for 1. I welcome all 3 councillors. I want every councillor to be doing the very best they can for their community. That's the right and proper thing to do as leader of the council. But obviously we will learn lessons as we always do, whether we win, lose or draw an election. That's what we do as politicians. And we will do that appropriately. Teresa, you indicated, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vincent. I think it's appropriate for us to thank you for the effort that you put in to try to take the best advantage for Medway. We will never say no to money and resources for Medway. And it was the right thing to do to try and position ourselves. I wanted to thank the staff as well, particularly you, Richard, but everybody in Medway who received the news of possible devolution with the mayoral authority with enthusiasm and thought about the opportunities afforded to them. Those opportunities will still be there in the new configuration of the council. We intend to push on now very hard with our priorities and our projects for Medway and make sure that our staff have got all of the development opportunities associated with the new things that we're doing and the chance to put themselves forward when we hear finally about local government reorganisation. In a way, it gives us more time. It gives us more time to think about where we want to be. Devolution will come. We don't know quite when at the moment, but we will continue to be in a position of readiness without taking our foot off the gas for Medway. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom. We've been through a process. We can watch what's going on. We'll be in touch with all of our Labour colleagues and civil servants as the process goes on, hearing about how it works out, learning where there are things that could be done better, and when it's our turn, we'll perhaps be in a better state. But in the meantime, there is more work to be done on the configuration of the new unitaries, and we'll still be asking, being very open and transparent, everybody to join with that. But stability is important. The welfare of our staff is important, and we'll hear as we go on through the budget the different ways that we're making sure that we hold on to those principles.
Thank you very much, Teresa, and I've got Simon as well.
Yeah, thanks very much, Vincent. My thanks as well to yourself and the whole team and to Richard and everyone for all the work that's gone in so far. I don't think it's wasted work. I think it's very valuable and is contributing to the planning that government is making as we go forward. One thing I would like to see, though, and I think we all do, is some certainty sooner than later. I mean, local government and national government is all about change management. Nothing stays the same as the politics shifts and moves. But I think one of the things we really could do with is some certainty as soon as possible on this. We're commissioning services, we're delivering services all the time. We're sorting out our planning system at the moment as we speak with the local plan stuff, and the sooner we know what the future looks like, the better we can plan for that future. So I would urge, when you meet with your colleagues later this week, to go for that word of certainty sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Teresa and Simon. Obviously, Richard and I will be at that meeting later this week, and I'm expecting to meet with civil servants from MHCLG again before the council budget meeting, so I will, of course, keep everybody informed as we move forward. Let's then move to the formal agenda today. We've got a lot to get through, and just for clarity, obviously, part of the reason we're meeting early this morning is to allow our friends, particularly from the Medway Messenger, to be able to publish and produce what we say this morning because of their print deadlines. We want to work with the local media. They're an important part of our democracy, so it's good to have them here as well today. Apologies for absence. Tracy is not here. I think the other 9 of us are all here, so thank you for being here at 10 o'clock in the morning. Some of us love that more than others. Are colleagues happy for me to sign the record of the decisions of the 14th of January? Thank you. Declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest and other significant interests. Thank you to Bhupinder Gill for, again, as always, very helpful advice and guidance. This is, as always, an unusual meeting, as well as the budget meeting on the 27th, so there may be declarations, including declarations you wish to make, which mean you can stay in the room, but it's good to make those here. Thank you. Adam.
Thank you, Vince. Yes, so as per my record of interest, I am chair of the trustees at the Sunlight Development Trust, which receives funding for the Medway Men and Sheds via public health. I'm also, because I live on my own, I benefit from the 25% council tax and that reduction. Thank you.
Thank you.
I reserve the right to remain in the meeting. And
very happy with that, in line with Bhupinder Gill's advice. Any other colleague declarations of interest?
Councillor Marhill's asked me to speak on his behalf. He's lost his voice. He has a declaration of interest to make. Pecuniary interest is a joint owner in the Arches, and where he runs a restaurant for that. But I've granted a dispensation in relation to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being the voice of Councillor Marhill. I can't see anybody else, so that's fine. Let's then move on to the first substantive agenda item, and it's an absolute pleasure to hand over to my friend and deputy leader to move this item, an item which we were talking about before the elections, during the elections, after the elections, and now we're making some good progress. So over to you, Teresa.
Thank you, Vince. And at the outset, thank you to Jackie Brown, particularly to Sue Irvine, who is Head of Partnership Commissioning, and our leader for the Better Care Fund, and Caroline Jarvis, the Business Change Manager. This report has taken a lot of work and a lot of detailed research to come into fruition. An idea that we had, as Councillor Maple has said before we came into administration, that we should build and operate a care home for Medway. The report is detailed. It describes to you the situation in the market, and it talks about in detail the number of people that we are looking after and the difficulties we are experiencing with finding places for everybody who needs a care home, including those who may be being discharged from hospital and need some re-ablement and help to recover, to enable them to go home again. We're also struggling enormously with finding short-term placements for people who need them. So the idea has come forward in great detail. We're asking you to note the comments of the Health and Social Care Overview Committee, and I thank them very much, actually, for the comments that they made and the enthusiasm that they showed for this project. It was helpful. We're being asked to look at the report, and I'm sure that everyone has read it, and review the options presented. Our preferred option is option 2. So we've got 4 options there, as always. One of them is to do nothing. And we are asking that option 2 is supported because that seems to be the most efficient, both in terms of cost and in terms of our ability to control it. So to design and build on existing council-owned land, the new care home, and to engage the services of a consultant who can help us put this together. We're not going to trash expertise. We don't know everything. Other people have done this. Since announcing that we were going to do it, I'm pleased to say there's been a lot of interest. I've had a lot of phone calls of people who want to help us. It will mean servicing a loan of over £12 million over 30 years, but and this project is a good risk, because it will mean that our residents can be cared for nearer to home, that we can help drive the local economy through health and social care, which is important, because there will be jobs and other associated things, such as assistive technologies and work to help people on the prevention agenda through public health as well. And that will be, here in Medway, a gold standard to offer to people to share our expertise, share our experiences, and eventually, in the same way that any care facility does, to turn a profit for the council that can be put back into making services even better than they are. So it's a big project. It's one that we have to be careful about, but one that we are capable of delivering on behalf of our residents, and one that I think will bring huge advantages both to the local economy and particularly to those people that we care with. So I'm interested in any comments that people have. It's important for us to approve the engagement of a consultant and to get on with this. I don't want it to be something that's a pipe dream. This is real. I want to see it coming out of the ground as early as next year, and for plans and planning to be in place by the end of this year, that all of those things are doable. And we've got to, in saying that we're going to do this, we've got to drive it. So I'm hoping for your support to do that.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. I've got Luella first, then Simon. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Teresa and the officers for this much-needed report and the right course of action. I fully support the steps to find out about the potential costs and benefits of care for Medway. And I just want to highlight, having our own care home will not just support our residents, as you've said, and their families, but also relieve the pressures faced not just in the community healthcare, but also on the bed blocking that's at the hospital, which is continuing. So it is so needed, and I wish it could come tomorrow. The fact that it will be in Medway means our residents won't be far away from their families, so they'll still get their regular visits and stay part of our Medway community, which is vital. I'm also pleased to see the potential mix, not just for dementia care sufferers, which we know we have many, but also the assessment beds and the wide range that it's proposed to offer will really be helpful. And the supported living is needed in addition to that. It's just what we need here in Medway, and I'm so pleased to support option 2.
Thank you. Simon.
Yes, thanks very much, Vincent. Thank you, Teresa. It's a terrific report. I'm really keen to see this go forward. To the whole team for the work so far on this. Just wanted to add in, I completely understand the need for it from a social point of view, but this is a real opportunity from a regeneration point of view and a climate point of view. We've got an opportunity to build our own facility here, which could easily be carbon zero, and that's very exciting. I had the opportunity yesterday, to be at Salford University with Beck Wilcox from the housing team, looking at what they've done at the Energy House there. And it's very exciting, the technology that's available now. Not only they've got actual properties inside these warehouses which are completely carbon zero and subject to every wind and weather condition from -22 up to plus 120 degrees and all the vagaries of the weather in between. And they remain sound and they remain climate zero, and they're powered by air source heat pumps and all that stuff that goes with them. This is an opportunity to build at scale, a bit like what we're trying to do at Gun Wharf refurbishment with the retrofit there. We can do the same there. In addition to that, the technology that they displayed to us on supported living and care and all the assisted technologies, they have all that there as well. It's quite exciting. So it can record everything from a leak in a water pipe to tell you on your phone that your water pipe's leaking, right through to knowing if someone's had a fall. And it's all there, and the technology exists right now to do that with these very intelligent computers that are built into the properties. So we can do all that with the technology that's available within the budget that we've got quite easily. So it's a very exciting project and a lot of opportunity. I would strongly recommend if anyone gets a chance to go and look around the facilities there, it's well worth the trip. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I can't see any other colleagues. So before I come back to Teresa, I mean, this is, in some senses, very symbolic that this is the first agenda item after the decision by government last week. Because actually, we've absolutely always had our eye on business as usual. And this is the strongest case of that, I think. We've said for some time, we don't think the system is working as well as it could do at the moment. That's not a criticism of any individual supplier, but absolutely it could and should be stronger. And this provision and the kind of multifaceted way it will help the system is very much to be welcomed. I think there's a good conversation with the NHS, but there needs to be more from them, I think. And I think that when we pass this today, that will send a very clear message. We want that conversation to be happening in real time as well as this provision comes on stream. And Llewellyn is absolutely right to say, you know, this is about trying to make sure that we've got the provision we need for the Medway community of the 2040s and 2050s, not the 2024s, so they're not having to go 20, 30, 40, 50 miles out of area, which we know in some cases, families are choosing that in some cases because the local provision perhaps isn't where it needs to be, or indeed the NHS and local authority provision isn't where it needs to be. This will change that. So absolutely welcome that. And I know your personal desire, Teresa, both with getting this on the agenda and the pace of change that will come, I think this sends a very clear message, if anyone was in any doubt, that this council is absolutely continuing business as usual at the pace of change we want to see to bring the best outcomes for the residents of Medway. So I'm very happy to support option 2, and I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And absolutely, Simon, this is a chance to show our determination to be a carbon zero authority and to be faithful to our climate change agenda, which brings together our One Medway approach. The other thing about this is that it's already generating interest from what's got the potential to be a new community. So our own development company, our own company, Kindy, who provide assistive technology, will also be able to have a stake in this. And I'm hoping that if we get the site right, we will have new types of living offer around it, lifetime homes, downsizing possibilities, and modern supported living, which is a real issue for the working age adults that we look after. And they will all be able, because this is a hybrid facility that can be flexibly used, all of those groups of people will be able to take advantage of that. And Vince is absolutely right. Our NHS partners will be able to use the facility as well, because we will expect there to be physios coming in, nutritionists coming in, pharmacists coming into the new facility. So it is exciting, but it's not a pipe dream, it's a reality. It's an economic driver for Medway, where there will be lots of opportunities for everybody. And I think we have to be very clear about that. You know, we've gone a long way towards shaking off a false image of social care as something that, you know, is a sort of second-rate industry that people don't choose to be in. On the contrary, it's a first-rate industry that takes care of our most vulnerable people, but links into lots of other things that are going on in the economic life of Medway. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'll be pushing hard for this to go as quickly as possible and coming back to you, if you're happy to approve it today, with reports about the progress.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. Are colleagues happy to support option 2? Is that agreed? Thank you very much, everybody. And again, a really clear message that this council is getting on with business as usual and looking to the future to make sure we've got the best facilities for our vulnerable older people. Let's move on to item 5, CQC, the local authority assessment. Teresa, back to yourself.
Thank you very much. And there is good news in this report too. Although in this new assurance framework by the CQC for local authorities, we were awarded a requires improvement score. We got 59%, which is only 4 points away from a good rating. When I came into administration, when I came into this job, our director assured me that adult social care was in a situation where if the assurance inspection happened, we would be rated as inadequate. And my own investigations and work with officers absolutely showed that. And one of the reasons was that social care, adult social care had been raided. There was a reorganisation 2017 to 2019 that took a huge amount of money out without any consultation and left the division in a situation where they were short-staffed, almost unable to meet their statutory obligations and unable to attract new people coming in to work. So as part of this, but not just because of this, we set about, and with your help, Cabinet, to invest in adult social care. Put in £2.5 million, that has turned a result. The staff, tired and coming through a tough time as they were, responded immediately to the way that the investment of work. We've had a restructuring which goes live at the beginning of March. We've put into place a new system which will give much greater management oversight. The assistant director had only 2 heads of service. So we needed to strengthen the number of heads of service. We needed to strengthen the back office support, which had been completely taken away, so that social workers and occupational therapists can work in the community quickly and be able to have some support for all of the record keeping that they do. We've introduced new technology to make assessments go more quickly. We've absolutely had a laser focus on safeguarding so that there isn't a waiting list for safeguarding reports to be triaged anymore. And we've offered opportunities for development and for promotion to our own staff. All of that is settling down, and into the mix came the news of the assurance inspection, which actually started last March and took 9 months to conclude. So that meant that staff had to present lots and lots of data, that they had to do presentations to the inspectors, and that culminated in a 3-day on-site visit in August, where the inspectors spoke to users of our care, they spoke to families, they spoke to our providers that we commission and work with in the community, as well as all of our staff. So I'm happy that it was a thoroughgoing assessment of where we are. It accorded absolutely with our own assessment of where we are. The improvement plan that we've put into place was already up and going and has got wide ownership amongst the staff. So I'm convinced that the next time the CQC come back, but even before that, we will be able to get a good rating. And we don't intend to take our foot off the gas. And as you can see, this links with Care for Medway. This is about a division, this is about a workforce, this is about a service that is going places, that is providing a good service to people in Medway, but is doing that in a modern context and taking advantage of all of the things that are available to us to maintain people's independence, work with our colleagues in public health to help people maintain their good personal health, work with our partners in the NHS to help people recover when they do become poorly, and provide a place of safety and decent care at a time in people's lives when they need it. So this report touches every family in Medway, and I want them to hear the message that I want the care that they receive, that their loved one receives, to be as good as it can be. And we've started in a good place on that journey. Of course, I would prefer to be good now, but our expectation and our understanding and intelligence of our own service accorded with that of the CQC. We are not quite there, but we do intend to get there. So the report is available for everybody to see. It's been shared widely. I had a big conversation with our providers about it just last week, and with Carers First to hear how people who receive our care feel about things. That work will continue because all of those stakeholders can play their part in what will still be an improvement journey. So another on the way to gold, down at bronze at the moment, but doing the best we can to make sure that Medway get a really good service. And I'm very pleased to say that in our settlement this year, the government has paid close attention to what's happening in social care and recognised the need to improve the way that we need to work, and recognise the value of actually making investment at a time when perhaps other people would have said that they wouldn't do it. It wasn't taking a risk, it was the right thing to do, and the staff have responded in a really great way, showing that you can invest to save.
Thank you very much. Teresa, any colleague, any question, comments? Certainly, I think from my perspective, I recognise, again, the individual work you have done as a portfolio holder, working closely particularly with Jackie Brown and Leanne Farrak, but also with the team at large. I know that it is valued that you give that time to go and see service managers and others, so that's really appreciated, and I think that's part of showing your personal commitment and our commitment as an administration. I think the length of time has to be noted between the start of the process and when we got the final outcome. That is a very long time. We're not unique in that, but it is, you know, what was happening in March was different to what was happening, or certainly what's happening today, for example, when you're in the first position to be able to report it to Cabinet. So I do recognise, and it's a fairly new scheme, so I recognise they will themselves, in a similar way actually to the housing assessment that Luella bought previously, we are at the forefront of learning this. So actually we're part of their learning process as well. And I would encourage colleagues there to think about the timescales. They need to bring those down to make sure that councils of all shapes and sizes who have got care responsibility can do so and respond to their report. But there is more to do. Absolutely recognise that. And again, I think actually Care for Medway is part of that commitment to showing we will move forward with that. We know recruitment and retention in some areas continues to, which is part of the reason we're going to be proposing some of the things we'll be doing later on. But we also know that actually in the current climate, people want to come and work for a unitary authority to understand how care, adult social care and indeed children's social care sits within that context, perhaps compared to a county. So look, more to do, but actually I think this is a good reflection, and as you say, we're on bronze at the moment and we've absolutely got our eye on going for gold for sure. I can't see anybody else, so Teresa, anything else back from you before we move to the vote?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that, and I just think it is worth noting publicly that the inspectors were very keen and included in the report, which I haven't seen before, the notification that staff told them how much they enjoyed working for Medway and how proud they were to work for Medway. Now, that's quite a big thing to tell a group of strangers who are coming to judge you, but that came across very, very strongly to the inspection team when they visited here, and I think that is something for us to be proud of and to celebrate, because all the time that staff are enjoying their work and all the time that they're proud of what they're doing, then that means they've got the capacity to improve even more.
Thank you very much indeed. Of course, one of our council's values, proud to be Medway. Are colleagues happy to support the recommendations as laid out in the papers? Thank you. And again, thank you, Teresa, for both of those first two items, critical for our community. Let's move to the other end of the age spectrum. And I think I'm going to hand it over to Adam in Tracy's absence on the final funding formula for mainstream schools and academies 25-26. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Vince. Yes, I move that we instruct officers to implement the 2025 to 2026 final funding formula for mainstream schools and academies, and this is as set out in the report in section 5. I also move that we recommend that we agree to item 1.1 in the report, that this is urgent and therefore is not subject to call-in. The Chair of Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny has been consulted and she has agreed to this. Now, the local authority is required to implement the final funding formula changes for the 25 to 26 year in accordance with the regulations and to inform the Education Skills Funding Agency as set out, as I mentioned, in section 5 of this report. So funding for schools comes in the form of the dedicated schools grant, and that goes to mainstream schools and academies, and it's a ring-fence grant. The Department for Education confirmed the initial dedicated schools grant in December of last year, and this was for the schools block allocation of 277.856 million and the local authority's central services block allocation of 1.302 million. So the amount of funding to be dedicated to schools and like academies is via the schools block is actually decided by the schools forum made up of representatives from the schools and the actual academies, and in line with government guidance. So I so move those two aspects of the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Adam. Any colleague? No. Again, I'd put on record my thanks to the Schools Forum for the kind of mature relationship that we continue to have in these circumstances. So back to you if there's anything else you want to add before we move to the vote.
No, just to say that we are aware that over 1,000 pupils within Medway at the moment have entered into being electively home educated. And so this is something which this administration, to do with scrutiny, will be looking into. And I would strongly recommend that perhaps we do have a task group to actually look at what are the particular reasons for such a large number of our pupils through their parents. There can be a range of reasons for this, but I think it is something due to the numbers that we really need to look into more. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Adam. And I'm sure ONS colleagues will consider that when they're looking at their next task group considerations. Are the recommendations as laid out agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Let's move to the next item, which is one of two, which is on, which was published on Friday because of the pre-election period, and that is the council tax reduction scheme. That falls to me, so as a number of the following reports do. Two elements to this, really. Firstly, we supported unanimously as a council actually the move to recognising specifically for council tax reduction schemes our care leavers, and absolutely want to reassure and confirm that this administration fully supports that and continues to. The financial implication of that is laid out in paragraph 9.3, but I think that is money well spent. We have got effectively two options available to us today. One is to retain the current income bands. That would have obviously a negative impact on residents, or option two, to uprate the income bands in scheme with inflation. That's the option I will be asking colleagues to support. Obviously, this will go to full council, so it's not our formal decision, it's our recommendation today. I think this is, of course, the right thing to do. We saw from national government, actually, certain elements of support not keeping pace with inflation, which means real terms impacts on individuals. Of course, we would prefer to be in a situation where anybody eligible would have 100% support, as was the case many, many years ago. We're not in that position, but I would re-emphasise the point that if there are individuals or families who are in exceptional financial difficulty, we have an award-winning team who deal with us, and they've done an absolutely brilliant job, and I'm very grateful for the work. And again, for example, myself and Nina, our ward surgery, had somebody who came to see us who was in difficulties. I've had feedback from an officer within a week that's been sorted. That person has got more money in their pocket as a result of coming to see Labour councillors, asking for support, and our brilliant team here doing that. So a huge thanks, as always, to those officers who continue to go above and beyond, as frankly pretty much every other officer of the council does as well. But when it comes to financial hardship, of course, that is the literal front line of where some families are. So happy to move this. It's quite a long report. It has to be a long report legally, but rest assured I'm comfortable and content with where we are, and I would ask colleagues to support option 2. Happy to take any questions or comments at this point. People are generally content. Happy to move then that we recommend option 2 to full council on the 27th. Is that agreed? Thank you. Then this is where I've got about 5 tabs, so bear with me because they're on different pages. Okay, we're then moving on to the Treasury Management Scheme 25-26, which is back in the substantive agenda. And this again, of course, will go through to full council to approve as part of the suite of reports they'll receive on the 27th of February. As always with this, I want to put on record my thanks to the Audit Committee. They've done a very good job on this. Actually, the Audit Committee, and not just audit committees here in Medway, although we've got an outstanding one which works well on a cross-party basis, chaired by Hazel Brown, who does an amazing job on that. They've had a lot to do. You know, nationally, there's been all sorts of issues with the audit system. We know that's been picked up by MHCLG, and there's been consultations on that. Of course, we've had a change of government, and that means different conversations and questions for the audit committee as well. And of course, they've been doing their business as usual, and this is certainly one element of that. I don't intend on going through it in detail today. Of course, recognising this is about ultimately our cash flow, our investments. We have good advice and guidance. We have a good internal team as well. A number of years ago, the external team was brought in-house, which was the right thing to do, and that will continue to be the case with this administration. So, of course, it is subject to what is happening elsewhere in the country as well when it comes to the economics of the UK. So, for example, the change in the interest rate we saw last week, that has, as is always the case, a mixed impact on our Treasury management. It will help some paragraphs within it. It will make some paragraphs more difficult. So, yes, rest assured, you know, under Phil's leadership in that part of our council, I'm comfortable with where we are. I think this is a good strategy, the right strategy, recognising at some point over the next few years, this is one of many things which, of course, we will have to be looking at carefully. And we don't have indications yet from MHCLG about how do we deal with all aspects of funding and finance for local government reorganisation. But I've got confidence that this administration and indeed our council's audit committee will be absolutely up for that detailed, granular job, working very closely with our hard-working officers. I'll move that at that point. Are there any colleagues who wish to say anything on the Treasury management? I'm looking around for 8 other hands, but none are going up. Therefore, I'm happy to move the recommendations as laid out that, of course, we will be recommending this to full council. Is that agreed? Thank you. Then let's move on to revenue budget monitoring round 3. So this is looking at this year's finances. Obviously, the budget year we're currently in. Bear with me 1 second as my system has ever so slightly frozen. This is the wonders of online papers. They're great when they work. Obviously, we are continuing to make progress on this issue. And rest assured, we've got those pressures, a number of which we've talked about already, whether it's the ongoing operational pressures. We know in areas like homelessness, adults and children's social care, and again, Medway is not unique and exempt from national pressures. We know, and I was at Labour Local Government Conference this weekend, homelessness and temporary accommodation, adult social care, children's social care, and SEND remain pressures throughout all councils. Now, of course, as a unitary authority, we have all 4 of those pressures, and they have increased across the country. So trying to deal with that at the same time as trying to continue to deliver good quality services at the same time as trying to deliver a balanced budget is a challenge. So I want to absolutely thank officers and cabinet colleagues for the work that they have done in reducing the pressure, you know, an improvement of close to £3 million on where we were for round 2. We've got obviously the final quarter we're in now. I would hope we will see further progress made on that. I'm confident on that. And I know the team of 25, as I refer to sometimes, no member of that team is complacent. Everybody is getting on with trying to find the most effective and efficient savings, working in innovative ways, looking at spend to save options as well. We've brought some of those forward. We will have more because that's the right thing to do. Better outcomes for taxpayers, better outcomes for service users. So colleagues may wish to speak about specific elements of their portfolios, but good work done, but clearly more to do. And this, of course, needs to be seen in the light of the 25-26 budget that we'll talk about later on as well. I've got Teresa, then Luella.
I wanted to draw Cabinet's attention to the situation in adult social care because we are reporting a worsening overspend. The word worsening is an unfortunate word because that money is being spent on people who need care. And it's important to remember that. And even in the context of that rising curve of demand with increasing complexity of cases, so we're seeing people coming out of hospital in a complex state. They may have been discharged from hospital because the hospital designates them as being medically fit, but the complexity of the care that they need is much greater than we've seen in the past. So that necessitates a more expensive care package. It necessitates intervention sometimes from specialist practitioners, and all the time the costs keep rising. We are also looking after more people of working age with disabilities and other issues than other people in the southeast and in the country as a whole. And we need to continue to think about why that is and what we can do about it and how we can wrap those people into our prevention of poor health agenda. But for the meantime, we have to look after them, and that's the right thing to do. Even in the context of that rising curve of demand and all of the difficulties that the division has faced, they've still found £2 million worth of direct savings this year and another £4 million in terms of cost avoidance, where demand management activities prevented further pressures from within the division. And this means actually a daily battle, albeit a comradely one, with our providers about the rates that we can offer them when we want somebody to go into a care home, with the NHS about people who they feel, and particularly people with mental health problems, should not be entitled to continuing care, and we feel that they should be, and with families themselves, again, in a comradely, supportive way, who want the very best for their loved one, but their vision of what the very best can be doesn't always accord with what we're able to offer within the funding envelope that we've got. So all of those sensitivities require management on a daily basis. And if that's happening and people are being cared for, being able to make those savings is a considerable achievement. And, you know, I do commend our staff for rising to the challenge, and rising to the challenge that Vince has been led by you about an insistence on much stronger budget monitoring than the situation that was in place when we came into administration at the council. So, again, optimistic that this is going in the right direction. I'm not embarrassed about there being an overspend because the reasons for it are absolutely rock solid. We can't stop that demand coming through the door. We have to look after people, and we have to make sure that they get the best care that we can give them. And that means that every single person in adult social care is making complex decisions every day, from the carer at home looking after somebody, making a range of complex decisions in terms of whether they need different medication, whether they have to call in another practitioner, thinking about safety, welfare and isolation for the people that they're looking after, right up to our senior managers who are having to push on with deploying a budget. We're making the government very aware of this. I'm pleased that Louise Casey has been appointed to run a social care commission. I am hopeful. I will be seeing her on Thursday, actually, as part of my work with the local government association, and I will be pushing for the commission to come forward with milestones along the way to the reporting. I don't want to wait until it reports to hear how we're going to have a new approach at government level to social care. But I'm pleased that she's there, and I'm pleased that that work is happening. In the meantime, locally, we've got to get on.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. Luella, please.
Thank you, Vince. As you mentioned, Vince, the homelessness and temporary accommodation costs remain high, but this administration is continuing its efforts to reduce those pressures on nightly paid accommodation with actions such as the purchase of the our own temporary accommodation and the launch of the One Medway lettings. The work is ongoing and, of course, does take time because obviously due diligence has to happen, but we're already seeing reductions in the nightly paid numbers. So I want to reiterate my thanks to the housing team and their continuing hard work for the benefit of the Medway residents. And as you say, Teresa, it's a process, but we're going in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Llewellyn. I would support that. I can't see any other colleagues, so I'll come back to Teresa.
Just coming back quickly about some joint work that Luella and I will be doing and showing how important the interconnectivity of the council is. We know that there are lots of homeless people stuck in hospital. They are taking up beds because they haven't got anywhere to go. Through our work with the Integrated Care Board, a task and finish group has been commissioned to look at that issue and think about how collectively across the system we can find somewhere for those people who are coming out of hospital, especially if they have been in for detox, which is important because of the association of homelessness and addiction. If we can find somewhere for them that we can collectively work together on to wrap around those people and help them change their lifestyle so they don't keep coming back through a revolving door. And as part of that, Luella and I are going to visit our night shelters, see the work that goes on there, and consider, because the government have relaxed the thresholds at which we can work with people who have been rough sleeping, consider how the work that goes on in the winter night shelters can be perpetuated throughout the year in different ways. So we're looking forward to a refreshed approach with extra help from the government that's come in for the Rough Sleepers grant. So.
Thank you very much, Teresa. And that is an absolutely fantastic example. If there's anybody watching going, well, why we live in a part of the country that has like a county and a district and borough, what difference does a unitary make? The fact that that one conversation can happen with one cabinet, one council, working for one community, that's a positive thing. That alone shows why this council, although again I haven't agreed with every decision obviously under every administration, the concept of one council doing that for their community for the last 25 years plus is the right and proper thing. So thank you again specifically for highlighting that. And I know, again, we believe in that one Medway approach, and that's a perfect example of that. So thank you for highlighting that. And I know you and Luella, along with the relevant officers, will continue to make good progress, ultimately to lead to better outcomes for our residents. As there's nobody else, I'm happy to move the recommendations as laid out. Obviously, there continues to be more work, and I know not a single person around this table is complacent about that. We continue to try and find the savings, the innovations, and the improvements that will lead us to the best financial outcomes we can reach with the priorities and pressures that we have. Is that agreed? Thank you. Let's then move on to the next item, which is the capital monitoring for round 3. Again, some similar process. I'm happy to move the recommendations as laid out in the report. There are a number there. I'll highlight a couple. Of course, it's worth stating at the start, we're currently underspending on our capital budget. That's the projections. Worth recognising, because again, not everybody is a local government finance nerd. You can't simply therefore go, let's move that money over to the revenue budget. That's sadly not how it works. That would make my life a bit easier at the moment, but that isn't how it works. So when people are looking at this and perhaps going, well, why have you got those two different set of circumstances? Often different funding streams, and importantly, different ways of funding the work that we do. I think I want to recognise in particular, of course, there's a number of additions we will be proposing at the full council meeting around capital for schools. I think in some cases, I would anticipate we may see some further requests come for that because of the brilliant initiative of the Labour government when it comes to breakfast clubs. I am having had some conversations with head teachers. I think there are going to be some building challenges in the early stages, so I suspect we will see some conversations and requests, but that will come further down the line. And frankly, what a great problem to have, that we are in a situation that every primary child in Medway will be getting that free breakfast to make sure that they haven't got a hungry stomach, but they've got a hungry mind to learn in the breakfast time period when they're first in school. So I welcome that. But I think we will see some requests around capital challenges for schools in that issue. I think we manage our capital programme well in Medway. We've got a long track record of that. Officers work hard on this, ensuring we get best value for money, and that continues to be the case. I'll move the round 3 overview at that point. If colleagues have got anything they wish to raise, please do. No, I can't see anybody looking to move anything. Therefore, I'll move the recommendations as laid out in the report. Are those agreed? Thank you. That then moves us on to the third item in this suite of 3 reports. And as Teresa rightfully said, this administration want to make sure that we're doing the work that we've been tasked to do, ultimately by the people of Medway, but very specifically by SITFA as well in their recommendations. As colleagues will recall, we invited SITFA in fairly early into our administration. We wanted to hear from the sector experts as to where we thought we were. I'll talk a little bit more about their report when it comes to the capital and revenue budget for next year, but one of the recommendations from them was effectively this process, a financial improvement and transformation plan. As we've said, we've had to put in place, rightfully, some additional support to support officers in this monitoring process. That's the right thing to do. It's looked at on a monthly basis, far more regular than it was previously. But even that has taken a period of time because there weren't half a dozen local government finance experts just sat at a local cafe waiting for us to tap them on the shoulder. So recruitment and retention in this area, like many areas of local government, can be a challenge. But we've got through that process and the results are there now. Colleagues can see the information as laid out. I know from speaking to cabinet members and when we have the team of 25 meeting, this is taken very seriously. I know the chief executive and his team look at this on a very, very regular basis. So I'm content we are on track. There's more to do, of course. This isn't an easy process. And that's, in part, it's not an easy process because of where we started from. So we're continuing on that. We've talked about some of the specifics in the previous report. So happy to pause at that point and hear if colleagues wish to raise anything specifically from their areas. Of course, again, we've been open and transparent, as we would always be in this administration, around the savings targets, where we've got to, what more work to be done. And of course, it isn't a unified position. Different parts of the council will move at different pace because of complexity, sometimes because of things like consultation, where if we're making changes, we've got a statutory duty to consultate, or we will consult anyway because it's the right thing to do. So, yeah, happy to move that and then move to colleagues if there's anything they wish to raise on the FIT plan. Silence is deemed as acceptance. And again, I know in part colleagues won't have a lot to say here because they're having those regular conversations with their assistant directors and directors at their regular one-to-one meetings. Therefore, our colleagues content, I move the recommendations on the FIT plan round 3 monitoring. Thank you. Thank you. Right, let's then move to the next item, HRA Capital and Revenue Budgets 25-26. Luella, over to you.
Thank you, Vince. It's a legislative requirement for HRAs to have a valid and balanced 30-year business plan. The HRA business plan is reviewed annually by Savills in conjunction with the Chief Housing Officer, the HRA accountant, our tenants panel and myself. This year, Savills held an afternoon workshop to review the plan with the tenants panel, senior housing staff. I was able to log in, and this is all to make sure our properties and assets are maintained, safe and efficient, while ensuring good quality housing, management and services to our tenants. So some areas to note in the report is that the plan is based against the 5-year rent settlement as announced in the autumn statement with September CPI plus 1%. Cabinet is being asked to recommend an increase of 2.7%, which is CPI plus 1%, as the annual rent increase for 25-26 to full council. The reserves are reduced in line with the sector recommendations to 1.9 million, using the remaining reserves to reduce higher rate borrowing that we have. And it should be noted this plan was supported at the Regen and Culture and Environment overview and scrutiny on the 21st of January. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Luella. Comprehensive as always and really important, not least recognising where we are today, that a number of those tenants will literally be 50, 100 metres away from where we are right now, of course, because the predominance of our HRA stock is in the former Gillingham Borough Council area. I'll move to Teresa.
Yeah, thank you, Luella. And I think it's really good to see how much are involving tenants now. at every level of work with our housing provision. And in particular, we can see at the report in section 8 that where people might be struggling with universal credit, absolutely we're there with our welfare and Bennett's team and the tenancy sustainability team, holding drop-ins, helping people work through problems before they actually become insurmountable. And I really think that's something to be very proud of, and I know that that was noted in the inspection. So the involvement of tenants all along, getting their views and opinions, getting their lived experiences, is helping to inform the things that you want to do. And I think, you know, we've seen some terrible cases about damp and mould and those kinds of things. But I mean, with your commitment to involving tenants all along the way, to doing things like the big door knock and the other drop-ins, that helps us to anticipate problems before they, you know, really start to bite. And it accords with the government's direction to have decent home standards. I don't know if other people watching the South East News last night at some of the terrible conditions people are living in other parts of the South East. And thus far, absolutely it's the right thing to do, that we've avoided that situation. And I think you're showing our partners in housing provision who work across the towns that we can be a gold standard for expectations about decent homes, and, you know, where people need to pick up their game, this is a way to motivate them. So well done for that, and I'm really pleased to see it.
Thank you. I've got Simon.
Yeah, thanks, Vincent. Thank you very much, Luella, for the report, and to everyone who's contributed to it. I'm on the HRA board myself, and I've said it many, many times, and I'll say it again in light of this report, is that, and really reiterating what Teresa was saying about how we should be the benchmark as a council for the private rented sector. I mean, in my own ward in Luton, the conditions are appalling in some of the places people have to live, and that's just simply not acceptable in this day and age. We shouldn't be in that position at all. And if we, as a council, can say, look, to the private rented sector, this is the benchmark, this is what we expect of you, you need to either achieve this or do better, then that's a really massive signal we can send out to the Medway community. So really welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I can't see anybody else. So before I go back to Luella, 2 or 3 quick things. Just on Simon's point there, absolutely. And let's recognise we have a 4-year term of office. We can't do everything in the first 100 days as much as we would all like to. So I know there's further improvements with selective licensing coming down the line, and before the end of this administration, that certainly will be in place. But again, you can't do everything in the first 100 days. On the proposals, very happy to support the proposals. It was utterly frustrating, even as leader of the opposition, that central government was telling councils like Medway what rate they had to set their rents at. Because, funnily enough, central government are not up for re-election every 4 years. It should be to the administration, whoever's running the administration, on how they choose to set those budgets. And I know your predecessor, Nashaba, made that point clear at the time, and I reiterate that now, that absolutely this is our decision. It's, in my view, the right decision, because we've got to keep those levels appropriate. But yeah, so moving away from central government telling us what rates we should be setting for our rent is frankly, was always ridiculous. And so I'm pleased we've moved away from that. And yes, again, I think this shows, as Teresa mentioned, and as was mentioned by those external inspectors, this administration wants to hear the voice of their tenants. You've done that personally out on the big door knock. I know officers do it day in, day out. A lot of it, particularly Gillingham and Rainham councillors, of course, because of where the majority of the stock is. But for those of us in the other bit of Medway, you know, that relationship with NHS is important as well. But for our community, who we are their landlord, I want us to be the best possible landlord, and I think we are. There's always more to do, but I think we're a pretty good landlord, not least because, frankly, sadly, there are still some pretty poor landlords in Medway. So I'll be very supportive of the recommendations as laid out. Luella, back to you.
Thank you. And as Teresa says, and I agree, we have an excellent tenants panel, and we have plenty of opportunities for the officers to hear the voice of the tenant. We're constantly engaging with people, asking, do they know how to report repair, do they know how to report damp and mould? So it is a really good standard of practice that all landlords should be sticking to, in my opinion. The teams, it's great, as you mentioned as well, Teresa, the teams working across the council actually to support not just our tenants, but all residents with help with benefits. And I'd urge anyone who wants to, actually, any councillor who wants to attend a big door knock, you're most welcome. The team will accommodate you. They want to show what a great initiative it is. So if if you've got time, do come along there every month, except for December. So if you want to come, there's plenty of opportunity. And finally, I'd just like to thank the officers for the continuing hard work around the HRA and for this report, and to ask Cabinet to note the outcome and comments of the Regen ONS, and also agree the recommendations to full council as outlined in section 1.2 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luella, for that detailed report. Are those recommendations agreed? Thank you very much. That moves us to agenda item 13, the proposed capital and revenue budget for 25-26. Remind colleagues, of course, we've got the supplementary agenda and indeed the second supplementary agenda, which has the commentary from the 4 overview and scrutiny teams. Let me start by saying we know this continues to be a challenging set of circumstances for us as an administration and therefore ultimately for the people of Medway. I mentioned earlier on we brought CITFA in to see how we were, to see how the land lied, so we had an independent view. The first sentence in their report said that Medway Council's finances at that point were of grave concern. That's pretty serious. And we've worked through that. We've got the FIT plan to show that we're making progress on taking, again, some really difficult decisions, and we'll continue to do that. But in spite of all of that, we continue to do really positive, good things, not just for the sake of it, because it's the right thing to do for our residents. And this budget is absolutely set in that context. We are on that journey. We're following the plan, and there's more to do. So I'll go through the recommendations in a moment just to give some context. But I wanted to say that at the start, to recognise that as Cabinet members, I know you've had to wrestle with some difficult individual decisions in your portfolios. I know you've had detailed conversations with senior officers. We've had helpful views shared by scrutiny, and I thank all 4 scrutiny committees. I hope that in a way that we've made as much of our information available as early as possible. I'm not one for rabbits out the hats, unlike other people. That's not my style. But even with that in place, it's still quite difficult because there are some pretty fundamentals when scrutiny are looking at this that we don't have. For example, for some of them, the provisional settlement. Of course, we now have that information. So I thank all 4 scrutinies. I recognise that they're doing that job with the information available to them at the time, and I value the time that they take. And again, I think the report in Appendix 2 gives a good overview as to the overview. So let me then move on to the recommendations, and I'll talk through them, and then I'll open it up to colleagues, and then in my summing up, I'll go through some of the final headlines. So we will be recognising the need to raise council tax. At the end of this process, we believe we will continue to have the lowest council tax in Kent for the second year delivered by this administration. Now, I also recognise that for 2 years, because of the recommendations from CITFA, we have sought council tax flexibility from government, and in both years for different reasons, but both sensible reasons. And I think this year in particular, there's a clear formula as to how they've got to that decision. That's not been made available to us, and I accept that. I accept that actually, if you've got rules, they should be absolutely exceptional. And if you look in both cases of this year and last year, I think it would be reasonable to say that. But it was the right thing for us to do because actually CITFA said that at the start. And as we said at this Cabinet, we accept CITFA's recommendations. We want to hear, as Teresa says, we like experts. They're a good group of people to listen to. So we will be increasing council tax by the maximum available underneath a referendum limit of 4.994. We understand that Kent and the 12 districts and boroughs are in a similar place, so we are anticipating that will be similar across the county, the region of Kent and Medway. So for any politicians saying they're deeply shocked at this, I would just check whether people of their own party are doing the same 5 miles down the road. I then want to move on to the recommendations from Employment Matters Committee, paragraph 1.3. And I thank Employment Matters Committee. This administration want us to be an employer of choice. And under the chairship of Mark Prenter, they've done a fantastic job in moving that forward. The report here shows the recommendations that have been put forward to full council. We will be supporting all of those recommendations except one. And that recommendation is we will not be supporting any reduction in fees and charges for sports centre uses for councillors. A number of councils support their staff in their total reward package by reduced fees, including Kent. You know, a number do that. So it's the right thing for us to do. And when Richard Hicks and I were at our Medway Live, the staff equivalent of Medway Matters Live, we heard very clearly one of the things that would help with recruitment and retention was to give consideration to that. Now, again, it's not free, even for staff. There is income being generated there, but they are receiving it in a way which many councils do up and down the country. The proposal around councillors wasn't in the papers, was tabled by officers on the night. I think in good faith, all members of Employment Matters Committee from all three groups, nobody spoke about it because, again, they didn't have an opportunity to see it beforehand. So no political group at that point spoke against it. So anybody, any politician speaking about this publicly may want to talk to members of their group. I recognise that those members were in a difficult position because they wouldn't have had a chance to talk to others. So it's right in the same way that we, you know, this is not our committee, but in the same way that we as an administration brought forward the recommendation from the Independent Remuneration Committee around RSRAs, and at full council we were clear we're not supporting that. It's right and appropriate that the recommendation that was brought forward by Employment Matters Committee is brought forward, but I'm very clear here today we won't be supporting that specific recommendation. We will be supporting the recommendation to increase staff pay. We know, as we've spoken about earlier on, recruitment and retention is a difficult matter, probably made more difficult in some senses because of the last few months' focus on local government reorganisation and devolution. I think that's posed lots more questions. Again, myself and the Chief Executive had a session with over 1,300 staff. I think we had a working assumption, which is now not the position we find ourselves in. So I think we need to work even harder. This is a great place to work. I used to be a Medway Council employee, as many people know, before I was a councillor. So we want people to stay here. We want people to be encouraged to stay here. And the final thing I would say on the recommendations from Employment Matters Committee, and I pay particular tribute to Teresa on this, staff well-being is essential. We want staff to work hard. I can tell you, Medway Council staff are working hard every single day. Some people raise concerns around working from home, for example. My concern about staff working from home is they're working too many hours. They're picking that email up at 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. when they're clearly not within their contracted hours. But they're doing that because they care about the people of Medway and they're dedicated public servants. So I think it is absolutely right that we add into their terms and conditions a well-being day awarded effectively around their birthday or on their birthday if that's a working day, to again recognise and say thank you ultimately for each and individual member of staff who are working hard for the people of Medway. I'm sure colleagues may wish to talk about that specifically when we get to where we go with that in our recommendations later, but I'm very supportive of that. I want us to be the best possible employer we can be. For years, we had pay freeze after pay freeze, real terms pay cut after real terms pay cut. That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable to the individuals, but actually to the wider taxpayers, it's not acceptable because people will leave and get another job with another council for better pay. So actually, I spoke about spend to save earlier on. From a cynical financial perspective, and I'm never cynical, but I am focused on the finances, this is a good financial move because it will stop us paying thousands of pounds to go through recruitment processes. It will keep people here. And we know that this puts us in a far more appropriate place than we currently were a couple of years ago when it comes to compare and contrast with Kent or with districts and boroughs or with Bexley and Bromley or other London boroughs when it comes particularly to upper tier functions. So I just wanted to make that very, very clear because I know there has been some talk about that from some politicians, and of course we can have that conversation at full council. We have the fees and charges. We have broadly raised those in line with inflation, which is the right and appropriate thing to do. If you don't do that, frankly, you end up in a situation where you're playing massive catch-up. We've seen that before in some areas. So they are as they're laid out. Absolutely want to continue the flexible use of capital receipts, and I thank officers for the work they do around that. I want to quickly highlight, because it's a very unusual recommendation, and in the world of 620 upgraded us then, 620 million pounds, still quite a lot, a parish precept of £18,486 may not seem very important or very big. Actually, from a democratic process, because St Mary's Who is currently in a situation not properly functioning as a parish council, we may be in a position to have to incorporate an anticipated precept, because we haven't had a precept demand at this stage. Of course, our district and borough our parish councils, so many councils, our parish councils have the right. They don't have a referendum limit, but I think we've got a reasonable working assumption there to continue with. And then finally, before I move into my final comments at this stage, before I throw it open to colleagues, of course, we are still in a situation where we're waiting for exceptional financial support. That request has been made. It was always clearly the indication that we would make a second request. The decisions around council tax flexibility means the working assumption means that will probably last for an additional year at a lower level, and it will be at a lower level because of the settlement we've had from government. And this is where I'll probably finish in my opening remarks this morning. We had a working assumption of around £4 million increase because of the settlement. That ended up around 11 million. That's a Labour government recognising in a way that they can, with the backdrop of the £22 billion black hole that they inherited, and we know about inheriting financial black holes, that even with those challenges, a relevant increase in areas like social care and temporary accommodation and homelessness is absolutely critical, not just for the people of Medway, but across England, actually. Some of those are systemic challenges. We know, because it's been said very clearly, this will be the only single-year settlement. Our government is moving to multi-year settlements, which will mean absolute clarity for planning, that long-term strategy, which we've been unable to do for more than a decade. So I do welcome that clarity. Of course, it would have been very, very challenging to get that done with the election just in July. To get to a multi-year settlement for this year would have been very challenging. But it's very clear from Angela Rayner, Jim McMahon, Sharon Taylor and others, this government that we now have is committed to frankly treating councils like Medway with respect when it comes to local government finance, and a multi-year settlement will help us deliver a longer-term plan and vision as we move forward. I will pause at that point. I'm sure many colleagues have got things they wish to say, and then I'll sum up at the end. I'm going to take Teresa first, then Nina, then Simon, and then I'll take some more.
Yeah, thank you, Vince, for that comprehensive run-through of a complex set of circumstances. And I do thank officers who, again, have had to perform a really delicate balancing act. And the multi-year settlements will put them in a much stronger position to look ahead and do so with confidence. These one-year settlements coming so late in the day when we're trying to set a budget has been very unhelpful, as you say, for the last decade, and made a difficult situation worse. We have got some good news. It's great to see a Labour government working with the Labour Council and recognising the pressures that we are under. We will still have to do some more borrowing. We've known that since SIPFA advised us that that was the right thing to do. But these are copable, planned activities, not a random series of events. They are planned activities towards making sure that we can balance the budget and keep our obligations going. On the issue of giving staff a pay rise again, as we did last year, that's the right thing to do. It recognises our appreciation for people in public services. It acknowledges how long they went without a pay rise at all, which is unacceptable. It helps us with recruitment, including with persuading people who might be working for an agency but associated with the council that coming to us will give them much greater security and a better long-term prospect than working for an agency will do, and that in turn will save us money. So I'm afraid I feel very disappointed at some of the political mischief-making and degradation of our staff that has happened already, even before we approve the budget. If people believe that those delivering services for Medway Council, that they're part of as well, by the way, politicians deriding the idea that it's the right thing to do to give staff a pay rise. They are part of Medway Council as well, and if they believe that our staff, still facing a cost of living crisis from the legacy of the disaster of Liz Truss, don't deserve for us to do the best we can to help them cope with that, then I'm afraid they're in the wrong job. Similarly, on the issue of staff well-being, absolutely it's important to make the best offer that we can. And offering people a subsidy to be able to use our sports facilities and keep their well-being and personal fitness going is the right thing to do. We want them to be well enough to deliver good services, and many of them have extremely challenging jobs. Again, hearing from people trying to pretend that it was always our intention to give ourselves a subsidy, that was never the case. You've made that very clear today. We are not the type of people who put our hands in the till and draw out money and benefits for ourselves. We've shown that over a long period of time, and our hands are clean. It's up to other people if they want to get involved in a grubby exchange of lies about what is going to happen. So I'm very pleased that you've been able to make that clear today, Vince.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Teresa. Nina?
Thank you, Teresa, for that clarity with regards to our position as well. Totally support what you, Vince, have mentioned. And I just wanted to make it absolutely clear as well, as there have been quite unhelpful headlines and social media posts, including from a particular council member regarding the sports centre membership discounts. The Cabinet is yet to deliberate the recommendations from the January Employment Matters Committee, but the inference that it was already decided by the administration is really unhelpful. Whatever was the intention, please do better. As I'm sure we all agree, our residents need accurate information. On the matter of Medway Sports Centre membership fee increase, we would like our residents to get the best value for their money, and we know that our Premier membership is unbeatable in what it offers. It has proved to be so popular, and rightly so, because for the price of one membership, you can access our wide range of facilities across all our sports centres. What's not to like? I receive glowing feedbacks about our Medway sports centres and our professional and helpful team members every single week. We're very happy with how hugely popular our Premier membership is proving to be, and we are keeping the same price for this year. We're not changing it, we're keeping it. So if anyone is on other types of membership, including perhaps with external sports clubs, we would highly encourage you to consider joining our Medway Sports Premier membership for the best value and also access to the wide range of sports facilities. Also, through careful planning, we have been able to decide that there will be 0 increase in membership fees for our residents who have disabilities. And I believe it's the right thing to do. And also reported in the media about the increase in membership subscription for Premier Plus. I just want to be very, very clear on that as well, that this is a concept yet to be trialed. So at the moment, it affects absolutely 0 members. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Nina. And again, I can give you the real time, the smiles on the kids' faces downstairs. Look, this is one of many fantastic facilities. And keeping it up to date and clean and tidy is something this team does brilliantly under your leadership and previously, of course, under Harinder's leadership. So a huge thanks to the team. And it's a great place to hold a meeting as well, if anybody's looking to hire a venue for a meeting. Simon, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Vince, and huge thanks to yourself and all the teams who put this budget together. It's a really complex process. Just briefly on the discount issue, I don't think there's anybody here who has either got a family member or somebody they know who works for the NHS, who get their discounts and really appreciate those discounts for being dedicated, hard-working public servants in all aspects. And the same has to be said about the council staff. They are hard-working public servants who don't get paid as well as the private sector, and yet they are still absolutely dedicated to delivering services for the community. So I think I welcome that discount for them, and I agree wholeheartedly that as members we shouldn't have that. So that's just a point on that. I think we're dealing with a complex decision-making process here. We're delivering public services at the same time we're trying to balance the budget, and we've inherited this unholy mess both locally 2 years ago and nationally around how the public finances are managed and have been managed, and we are trying to sort that out, and we're getting there. And it's slow, it's difficult, but we can do it, and we're on that journey to achieving that. But it does require intense hard work from all the staff, and I just wanted to sort of reiterate that, particularly with the frontline services staff who I've been working very closely with over delivery of things like waste management and other services. They have worked their socks off in the last few weeks to get this right, and they've got results that we're really, really pleased with. So that's just to sort of reiterate the thanks for what's been going on behind the scenes. And perhaps I should have mentioned this on the previous item about capital spend, but this is a capital budget as well. And the benefits of what we are doing on Spend to Save are writ large. The new waste vehicles have arrived, or some of them have arrived, with the North Depot, and they are amazing. I've sat in one of them, and it's great fun. It's like sitting in a Rolls Royce, to be honest, and the drivers are delighted. But notwithstanding that, those vehicles are now reducing the repair and maintenance budget dramatically. They're reducing the replacement fleet budget when their vehicles are off the road dramatically. That's what investing really comes to. And actually, those vehicles are being delivered well below the original capital price that they were. We thought we'd purchase them. So that's the result of some really good management, sheer hard work, and an outcome that everybody's happy with. Equally, the back of the vehicles is now electrical rather than diesel driven, so they're silent when they empty into the back there. So that's good for our residents, not getting that noise in the morning of waste being managed. So there you go. Good result. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. I won't make any comment about that being anything but rubbish, although clearly it's picking up rubbish. Alex, please.
Thanks, Vince. Yeah, just to add my voice to the comments of other cabinet members on the suggestion, the outrageous suggestion that we might be in these positions for our own gain, that we're here on the make. It's a disgusting slur, and I would encourage the individual who made it to retract it on the basis of actually paying attention to what has been said here today. As someone who is proud to pay my £40 a month as a Premier member of what are incredible facilities, to have the choice of those 4 centres, which are, we're looking forward to improvements, not just here at Cozenton Park, but at all of those centres going forward. So I think it represents excellent value for money at £40 a month. I would recommend it to any staff who are eligible for a discount to take up that offer. It's it's a fantastic opportunity to improve their health and support the facilities that are being built here and improved elsewhere. Just to move on in a more general sense to the sort of the principles which underpin the way that we have looked at this budget, the reason that we've done things this way, the focus on income generation rather than cuts to services. And there's a very good reason for that. And I'm reminded of the principles which underpinned the foundation of the National Health Service by Aaron Bevan and some words which he spoke around those principles. When he talked about illness is not an indulgence for which people have to pay, nor an offence for which they should be penalised, but a misfortune, the cost of which should be shared by the community. So the reason why, for example, within my portfolio, residents are going to see increases to parking charges, for example, that are something that will not be welcomed by anyone that pays them, but I want them to recognise what those increases achieve on behalf of the community. Because the income that we can generate through various things which we are able to charge for, whether it's gym memberships, whether it's library fines, whether it's parking charges, whether it's licensing, is money that doesn't have to be found from those parts, those services delivered by the council, for which people genuinely have no choice but to need. So people don't choose. It's not an indulgence or a luxury for people to require special educational needs provision for their children. It's not a luxury for people to receive relief in times of homelessness and to get that assistance which they rightly can expect from this council, and which I know is delivered in an incredible way by our rough sleeper team. They don't choose to require adult social care, but all of us expect those services to be available for us should we need them, and for our loved ones should we need them. So in the grand scheme of things, I would urge the keyboard warriors, the social media blowhards who talk about the council bleeding drivers dry, or any of this nonsense that you hear. You know, I speak as a driver, as a resident, as someone who also uses these services. I'm glad that in making those difficult decisions, that I am able to relieve through my portfolio some of the pressure on things over which people have no choice. Ultimately, I don't think anyone is going to make a decision not to park for the sake of 60 pence. I don't think that's realistic in 2025, despite claims to the contrary from certain opposition members. We've been able to go back and present the facts and show that actually the number of visits to our car parks increased last year, despite increases to charges. So, you know, once again, you know, I think we have to remind those individuals, particularly those on the opposition benches, that the grave situation described by SIPFA that we inherited from them due to their failure to grip the finances, their failure to make decisions over 2 decades, which might have spared them the odd headline, the odd social media witch hunt from certain individuals, has done nobody in Medway any favours. So the decisions that we're making today, they sowed the wind, and we are reaping the whirlwind of that, and we have to put that blame squarely where it lies. You know, as I've said in council meetings before, when we see this criticism coming from opposition members, it's the arsonists complaining to the fire brigade about the way they are putting the fire out. We're putting the fire out. I think this budget shows that. We're making progress, we're taking difficult decisions, and we're doing it on behalf of the community, for the greater good, not for personal gain, for the greater good, for one Medway. And I'm pleased to support the recommendations as set out by the leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Adam, please.
Yes, thank you, Vince. I just wanted to allude to the fact that I had the opportunity with my colleague, Councillor Tracy Coombs, to go and spend the morning down at Broadside viewing the work done with the teams involved in children's social care, single point of access and multi-agency safeguarding hubs. And Tracy and I saw firsthand those calls coming in from a number of children and families, like some of them quite hard to actually, stomach because, life in all its rich, like tapestry, and it is very hard out there. But I came away from that visit alongside my colleague Tracy Coombs, very pleased with the team spirit, that they look after each other as peers, and also speaking highly of their responsive managers as well. So that was very pleasing to hear. And also, just to say that we do monitor things like caseload. So unfortunately, the caseloads, a bit like we've heard from adult social care, is still going up, such that the interim assistant director Kelly Cogger had to recommend to me, which I supported, going out to recruit for another 8 experienced social workers in order that we can reduce the caseload, which was getting up to 40 cases per social worker, which is untenable really, because we have to be alive to the well-being of those colleagues and the decisions which they take with some very problematic cases which they're dealing with. I'm also, as portfolio holder, very pleased to go out onto the front line. So just last week I went with an experienced social worker to visit a family where there had been certain allegations made, and I pay tribute to their continuing work. And then from the leisure point of view, because many people will know that I am a keen swimmer, I'm very pleased. I haven't yet been for a swim in the Cozenton Park, but I brought my costume with me just in case there is time at lunchtime. But I'm very pleased to report that our existing sports centres, such as Medway Park, is getting some investment as well. In fact, I was very pleased to go in after a swim into the showers to be greeted by a makeover certainly in the male, and I hope in the female showers, looking very modern with a new floor, etc. And it was commented on by the other swimmers as well. So not only are we seeing the investment in the new sports centres, but we're also seeing some investment in our much loved existing facilities as well. And I think that's very important for our physical health and our well-being. I abhor the allegations that have been made that I would somehow be seeking to reduce what I pay for that. That's absolutely not what I'm about at all. I know that we've had to make some difficult decisions around the cost of things like swimming in previous years, but I do recognise also the challenges in terms of being able to recruit and retain social workers, which is within my portfolio holder as well. So I've got no problem with us being able to, in common with the NHS, reduce the charges to be able to keep that well-being going of the staff that we rely on to be able to help and respond to some very difficult situations being faced by children and families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other member at this stage, so can I thank colleagues for all of their detailed contributions. I certainly recognise that we are on a journey, and I refer back to and take colleagues back to the fact of our 5 key pledges, ultimately. That's what this administration have always been about. People have said that we've promised 150 different things. We know the 5 key pledges we put to people. We will continue to deliver the lowest council tax in Kent for the 2nd year. We will continue to have free weekly bin collections, whereas the Greens in Bristol are proposing 4 weekly bin collections. That's what a Green administration will bring to you. This Labour administration, weekly bin collections, free bulky waste collection, continuing, having brought it back under our administration. We're continuing to bring forward new green spaces. I was pleased to be with Simon planting some trees. I hope mine have survived. Working with the community, with parish councillors, local councillors, volunteers, people giving up their time to make our space greener and cleaner, delivering on that pledge. We're continuing to work hard to deliver on the key issues of our town centres, increasing jobs in places like BAE Systems, one of our biggest employers in not only our area but the whole of the region, and indeed working hard to deliver those safer streets. We know that we've got the operational properties review coming forward. We'll be looking at those neighbourhood hubs, again, one of our key pledges. So we continue to work hard every single day on those pledges. The budget is how we pay for that. And let's not forget, every day this administration, this unitary authority, is spending £1.1 million a day on our children's services, our housing and our adult social services. That's what we're delivering every single day. That's why we have to take some sometimes unpopular decisions, but the right decisions. Leaving things to wait for next year and the year after is not good financial or political leadership. That's what this administration is delivering, and we will continue to do so every single day that we're given the opportunity to. So I recommend the proposals to Council. I'm grateful for colleagues' contributions, detailed contributions. Thank you for those. And I think any misinformation, I hope, has been well and truly put to bed by our debate this morning. Are colleagues happy to agree to recommendations? Thank you very much indeed. We're going to move on to the next agenda item on page 369 of the substantive agenda document, the One Medway Council Plan 24-28, the key performance indicator refresh. I'll move the recommendations as laid out. This is a pretty light touch review. As you can see in the document, most areas are continuing with the targets and key performance indicators as laid out previously. There are one or two we're still waiting for some data on, and we'll come to those as and when that data becomes available. A couple we are amending, and the reasons are laid out on that basis. So I'm happy to move that recommendation, obviously, to go to full council. Happy to take any questions or comments from colleagues. No, everyone's content. Thank you very much for that. Therefore, move the recommendations. Are those agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Let's then move on to the next agenda item, which is the Risk Register Annual Review. Bear with me just one moment. Technology is always my friend. There we go. Thank you. Again, this has been through Audit Committee and Business Support, overview and scrutiny as laid out in the supplementary agenda. So again, thank you to colleagues there. There is always a little bit of subjectiveness when it comes to this issue. Some people will like different formats, different language, and perhaps will think that things should be in there when they're not, and vice versa. So it is not a perfect science, but I'm comfortable and confident that we have a strong risk management approach. In particular, I would recognise both our internal audit and governance team and our audit committee. They do important work to make sure that this is looked at independently of the administration. It's the right and proper thing to do. That is what both SIPFA and Solace is the senior council officers, a collective group. They both recommend the approaches we are taking. So I'm happy to move the recommendations as laid out, and happy if colleagues have got any questions on that accordingly. Teresa.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it is really important, as you've done, to recognise how critical having a proper risk register and the management of risk is to good business. The council is a business, and we do need to do all of the things that make a business work. The risk register enables us to plan ahead, because we can look back and look at the risk register and think about the consequences of things that we want to do. We can analyse the way that our plans for the future might have an impact on other things going across the council. And it brings together all of the things that we need to be aware of and prepared for should we be blindsided by an event we're not expecting, like, for example, a pandemic. So it's absolutely critical to have those things there. That does not mean that the apocalypse is coming tomorrow and that all of the things on the risk register in the worst case scenario are going to come true. On the contrary, the risk register is there to prevent those things coming true. So when I hear people, and particularly I think colleagues in the media, go lazily to the worst case scenario and tell other people that's going to happen, that disappoints me. It isn't the way things work. It isn't what the risk register is for. That's an easy way to spread a bit of panic and fuss amongst people who perhaps haven't had access to an important document like this. If you work in a shop, if you work in a factory, if you work in a garden, if you work on a farm, there will be a risk register. It's important to understand your business and the way your business can impact on all the people you're trying to serve and all the people that work for you. But it doesn't mean that you are going to allow the worst case scenario to happen. In fact, the risk register is there to make sure that it doesn't. I just say that advisedly to all of my good friends in the media and anyone else who wants to pick on the idea that the apocalypse has already arrived.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Yeah, it's true to highlight, things like the language, and again, this is where it's a subjective view. Words like catastrophic, that is normal risk register language, but I can understand how in a radio broadcast or a television broadcast or an online piece, how reading that word in isolation could give people different levels of concern. So I'm grateful for you raising that. Obviously, don't forget there is the Appendix 3, which lay out the specifics of what both colleagues in Business Support and Audit Committee said as well. So with that, I can't see any other indication. So happy to move the recommendations as laid out in the paper. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. I'm going to take a quick 2-minute adjournment, mainly because my laptop has just died and I can't chair a meeting without the laptop. So we'll take a 2-minute adjournment. Thank you very much. thank you very much for that brief adjournment, and thanks to the Chief Operating Officer to see that the connection hadn't been fully made. So we're fully powered up, ready to go for the last few agenda items. Let's move then to item 16, the Council Plan Performance Monitoring and Strategic Risk Summary Quarter 3. Obviously note the recommendations in paragraph 1, and obviously recommendations around the risk strategy as laid out in Appendix 2 in particular. Again, this is a fairly steady as it goes report. As is always the case, I would never expect a risk register to be all green, so a performance register to be all green. If that was the case, if the one Medway Council plan had nothing but green performance indicators, then it's probably not got all the right targets set. Some of them should be stretch targets, and they certainly are. I don't intend on going through every item one by one. Colleagues across the Cabinet may wish to highlight situations in their particular portfolios. It continues to be obviously something which sits alongside the financial management of this organisation. The FIT plan is very clear on where we're moving, and of course we need to sense check, as we do on a quarterly basis here, but obviously more regularly in conversations between portfolio holders and corporate management team members, if there are any challenges, either generally or specifically because of the financial situation we find ourselves in. But I think what we're seeing more regularly is where there are pressures because of the service delivery requirements and the community pressures, which again are not unique to Medway, as we've spoken about a couple of times this morning. So I'll move the recommendations as laid out. Thank the colleagues in other parts of the council for looking at this, and happy to throw it open to any colleague who wishes to comment. No? Okay, that's all noted then. Is that agreed? Thank you. Then let's move to the next item, which is the Kingsley House office lease renewal. Worth saying that for this item and the next item, we have blue papers. They are now blue on our screen as well for the technical nerds out there. I'm not intending to go into closed session. No one has indicated they wish to. And I think we can have a full and open conversation without having to go into closed session. So on that basis, I'll move over to Luella to move item 17. Sorry, Zoe, not Luella, sorry, Zoe, and then I'll be moving to Luella after that.
Okay, thank you. This is a request for Cabinet to delegate authority to complete the lease renewal for Kingsley House office, as the agreed rent is in excess of £20,000 per annum outside of the employee's delegated scheme. I recommend Cabinet agrees to delegate authority to the Director of Place in consultation with myself as the portfolio holder for business management to sign and execute a new lease on the best terms reasonably obtainable as set out in the exempt Appendix A to the report. The reason is provision of suitable office accommodation for housing services in conjunction with the CABS, Customer and Business Support Service, after expiry of the existing lease on March the 19th, 2025. The value of the lease is in excess of £20,000 per annum, therefore is a matter for Cabinet. And the new lease must be in place prior to March the 19th, the date on which the current lease will expire. For the CABS tenancy on the ground floor and the first floor south block by way of a lease due to expire on March 19th of March 2030, that's the proposal going forward. And it was considered that housing services and CABS would not require the accommodation for the full term of the lease to end on the 19th of March 2025, with a view to securing long-term accommodation within the Integrated Hubs programme. Subsequent negotiations undertaken to obtain the best terms now agreed with the new lease need to be concluded before the 19th of March 2025. And it's recommended that option 5.1 is to authorise officers to instruct the legal department to complete the new lease in excess of the £20,000 per annum threshold to secure its continued lease. Option 2 would be to refuse such authorisation, displacing housing services and cabs into fragmented locations and thus discontinuing face-to-face appointments for housing needs residents. It is essential that the new lease is completed prior to the expiry of the existing lease, and the proposal is to agree option 1.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Zoe, and I know there's been some work going on with officers on that. Luella, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zoe. The extension of the lease and continued use of Kingsley House is key to supporting the homelessness and housing options service delivery for our residents. And just to reiterate, our ambition is to open the front door to residents. That remains, and work is ongoing to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other colleague? No, certainly I would absolutely wholeheartedly endorse Luella's position there on making our housing service, which is on a day-to-day basis, one of the most kind of challenging because of the circumstances people find themselves in. Even more accessible. We've got a great team there, but they should be more accessible. And I think when I met with them just before Christmas, I was pleased to hear that was a kind of view from them as well. It's slightly frustrating that we're in the position of having to extend this lease. I wish we were in a different place than some of our other programmes, but as I said earlier on, in a full-year term, you can't do everything as quickly as you would like sometimes. So, again, I welcome the various break clauses, which are standard practice in a lease like that, and it may well be different for the two different parts of the process, but certainly as we look at the Integrated Hubs programme, and again, we've got the operational buildings review coming shortly, I would hope that the move for housing eventually longer term to their new home, pardon the pun, will be clear as soon as practically possible. But it's right and appropriate that we need to resolve this as quickly as we can. We can't be in a situation where that team is without suitable premises to do their business from. So I'm supportive of this. Can't see anybody else, so happy to move back to Zoe for the recommendation.
Yes, just to recommend it that we adopt option 1 on the paper.
Thank you very much indeed. Is that agreed? Agreed. Agreed, thank you. That moves us to the final item for today's business. South Thames Gateway Building Partnership Control Business Plan. That needs an acronym, I think. STG. Simon, over to you.
Thanks very much, Vincent. Thank you, colleagues. So just to spat out the recommendations here, is to approve the business plan for 25-28 for the South Thames Gateway Building Control Partnership, as set out in the exempt appendix, and also to agree the change to the contribution arrangements for this year, as set out in section 2 of the business plan. Those are the two proposals for recommendation today. I mean, the partnership, as colleagues may be aware, just to sort of give a bit of background, is Medway, Canterbury, Gravesham and Swale. It's been operating since 2007 and very successfully, and expanded to include Canterbury in 2018. And this year we take on the chair of the partnership for the year, and the business plan needs approval as part of the constitution. So it's a rolling business plan that goes forward every year. Just to specify, I mean, there are some statutory responsibilities involved here in respect of obviously building control and dangerous structures, demolition works, etc. And it's reviewed constantly by the government, especially since Grenfell. The rules have changed significantly there, and there's much more scrutiny. And just recently, in the last 18 months, inspectors now have to be registered as a legal requirement. So anyone acting as a building inspector, if they're not legally registered, it's a criminal offence. Under the devolution arrangements, when and if they happen in the next however much time, there's a lot of consideration for expanding the control service as it is at the moment, which we would welcome, and obviously that's something that will be built into the business plan going forward as and when we know what's happening there. Just sort of to re-emphasise that there's a lot of key issues that we have to deal with in terms of training, building inspectors and recruitment and retention and staff payments. All that is all dealt with through this partnership. So it's a key part of our function as a local government, and it's all based here in Medway, with Janine doing a fantastic job, and she's responsible for, and her team responsible for the production of the business plan. So thanks to them. So as laid out, and the recommendations as laid out.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. And again, it shows that great cross-border working is already in place. This is not a new phenomenon for us. Working with Gravesham and Swale and Canterbury is a good thing, and something I absolutely wholeheartedly support. And I look forward to you taking up that new role this year in the chair. Obviously, the most of the detail is on the blue paper, which we're not going to go into, but I'm very supportive of the recommendation for the business plan as laid out. Any other colleague? If not, Simon, back to you for any final comments.
No, nothing else for me. It's just apart from, again, reiterate my thanks to the team involved in producing it all. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Is that agreed? Thank you. Before I close the meeting, can I thank all officers for their work on these papers? We've got over 1,000 pages of report today. I would say in particular, a thanks to Phil Watson, the finance team, for the detailed work that went into the various financial papers, many of which were being dealt with in a real-time basis over the Christmas period, at the same time that we were having discussions about priority programmes. So my thanks is heartfelt, genuine, and please do pass that on to the whole team, and certainly recognise that as we move forward to the council meeting later in the month, that all councillors will be looking at that appropriately. And Teresa, to finish off.
Just one thing that I omitted at the beginning of the meeting, my thanks to everybody in the Chinese community and all the people who supported them on Saturday for a fantastic Chinese New Year parade, the Year of the Snake, Wisdom, and all sorts of other things. Lovely, colourful parade on a grey day with literally hundreds and hundreds of people watching that. I think, you know, diversity is a huge strength in Medway, and it was a lovely occasion, even bigger, I think, than it was last year, and some great activities to children. So my thanks to the events team and everybody who supported that parade, including child-friendly Medway and all the people that joined in, and of course our lovely Mayor Nesterov, who was at the front there and having his photograph taken, I think, all day long.
Absolutely. Oh, my mic's back on. I was just telling the world that I'm a snake, so you can work out how old I am, divided by 12. And then, of course, finally, we're not in our normal place. So again, a huge thank you to the team here at Cozenton Park Sports Centre, still occasionally known as Splashes. We weren't in Medway Park, still occasionally known as a Black Lion. We will, of course, be back to our normal venue of the Ever Climate St George's Centre for our next Cabinet meeting, and indeed Council at the end of the month. Thank you very much.
Thank you.